You know, there's an old adage that the Chinese say, in the battle between the water and the rock, the water always wins.
My daughter used to come and visit on weekends. She was 7 or 8 years old at the time. One of the things that got me really furious was that here was this beautiful body of water. Our boatyard was in Staten Island, overlooked the Verrazano Narrows, and you could see Manhattan Island from it. And the problem was, it was a beach, but it was called Needle Beach for any reasons you can imagine. I realized that I had to fill a fiberglass dinghy full of tap water so she could get cool in the hot days of summer. And it made me angry enough to find out what other people were doing to protect the waters nearest their home. And it led me to the American Littoral Society and Derin Bennett, who was their executive director. He was interested in having a Baykeeper in Raritan Bay, and I took up the mantle. I said, well, Derin, what do I have to do to become the Baykeeper? And he says, well, you can come and work here. And this was in a building on Sandy Hook. And for the first 4 years of Baykeeper, we worked in that office. Greg was one of my first employees. And after that, we became our own individual 501c3 nonprofit.
Most of our projects are big, long-term, tough projects. Baykeeper's mission is to protect, preserve, and restore the waters around the New York-New Jersey Harbor or Hudson-Raritan Estuary. In doing so, we also look to enhance the human and natural communities around the estuary. We're a nonprofit conservation organization that's part of the Waterkeeper Alliance, which has now over 350 keepers worldwide. A keeper is an organization that adopts a water body or a system of water bodies.
I'm Amanda. I am a marine scientist and I grew up boating on these waters. It's nice working with my team at Baykeeper because everyone's just really passionate about what we do. We get along well. We all know science is the most important thing.
We are addressing water quality in many different ways, including by way of our oyster restoration program. And we are also engaged in public education. We are involved in advocating for citizen access to the waterways. We are involved in the preservation and conservation of parklands along our waterways. And we, of course, want to do what we can to continue the momentum for improving the quality of our waters for future generations. In North Jersey in particular, the storm drain system is connected with the sewage treatment plant. The combined flow of the storm water and the sewage going through one single line of pipes to the sewerage authority causes an overflow. Every year, approximately 23 billion gallons of sewage are flushed into the waterways of the Hudson-Raritan Estuary as a result of stormwater overflows.
It overwhelms the system. When the system gets overwhelmed, the water has to flow. There's no shut-off switches. There's no valves on a system. So it overflows to the river. At the end of that concrete structure is an 84-inch combined sewer outfall. 84 inches. You can walk through there. You can almost drive a car into the thing.
For things like CSOs, the combined sewer outfalls that we deal with, they're almost entirely concentrated in some of our largest urban cities. Newark, Camden, Jersey City, Paterson. And so we're talking 30 CSOs or more if you're in the Newark-Patterson area.
Riverkeeper is a program of New York, New Jersey Baykeeper. We spend a lot of time out doing river patrols. People approach me and say, well, I'd like to help you. What can I do? And I say, what I need is just what I'm doing. eyes, ears, and noses on the river. We're a citizen steward. We're moving by kayaks up and down the river and keeping an eye on what's going on.
Because we're in a northern urban area, slightly suburban, where industry boomed in the years and centuries past, and populations built up around that boom and building along riverfronts, specifically because of the need for water, the need for transport, the need for that access to get shipments up and down rivers, things like that. Everything kind of focused and centered there. But these were years and years and years before environmental laws existed. So companies like some of the ones that existed along the Raritan River, some of them existed along the Passaic River and the Hackensack River, disposed of chemicals, disposed of waste on their property, underground, buried in barrels, 100 years before the Clean Water Act even existed.
Back at the time, if you had an industry that created a liquid industrial waste, you went to an area that was unpopulated, preferably along a river system, so you could dump your industrial waste in a river.
As the barrels started to break down, as the toxins started to leach out, find their way into the water, into the sediment, and the communities that are very densely populated around those waterways are the ones who are hardest hit.
My name is Donna Wilson, and I'm standing here at the Raritan Bay Slag National Priorities List site, also known as Superfund site. The main contaminant here is lead. We became interested as a community in cleaning it up, and actually we just had our 10-year anniversary of the Raritan Bay Slag Community Advisory Group, also known as the Slag Tag. New York, New Jersey Baykeeper was instrumental in helping us, the community, understand the steps we needed to take, and has been very active in pushing to get the EPA to get this cleaned up. We, the community, were kind of amateurs. I mean, my background's mathematics. We had an environmental engineer in the community that could help, but as far as how to get governmental agencies to move, we really didn't have a lot of experience in doing that, and Greg and the rest of the crew at the Baykeeper have done that before.
We work very closely with the Super Law Group in New York City, and they work very closely with a lot of local keepers. And so we work with what we know, which is who in the areas in which we work has a permit, and why would the business that is right next to them doing the exact same thing isn't listed as a permittee. And so we investigate that. We know our waterways and we know where the worst hit areas are, and so we focus our searches on land where that flows into those waterways. So areas like the Arthur Kill, areas like the Passaic River. We are actually about to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act soon. It was established under the Nixon administration, essentially in response to there was a river on fire. And the government at that point realized that we needed to do something to prevent things like that from happening again. And so they established the Clean Water Act, and in it determined that fishable, swimmable, drinkable water was the standard that we should meet for all waterways.
We made that kind of our credo, that eventually the waters of the harbor would become fishable and swimmable. And we added accessible, and that means that people also had a right to get to the water's edge to do those things.
Access to water is not just about the Jersey Shore, and it's not just about the beach, right? This is access to a waterfront, and it's the waterfront needs some TLC, it needs some tender love and care, and the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper is in favor of cleaning up the waterfronts and making them publicly accessible for everybody to enjoy. So I've been working with the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper for almost 20 years now. I was first introduced to Andy Wilner and then Greg Rameau, probably 2003, 2004. Greg gave me a kayak ride out from Lincoln Park in Jersey City out onto Newark Bay. We went into the middle of the bay and I think into the shipping lanes. So it was an interesting ride being surrounded by large ships. It was something, again, being a city kid, I had never been down to the water's edge before. You know, Newark Bay was just some place growing up that I wasn't allowed to go. You could see it on a map. You could see it as you were driving along, but it was not some place that at least my family or most people I knew would consider to be safe. The process of working with the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper on projects, they are friendly. At least they are friendly to me. If you're a polluter, if you're an industry that wants to ignore public access, they may not be so friendly. Any municipality that has a river are in favor of public access. It's an economic development tool. It's a quality of life measure.
You have to factor in human species more than you do in other places, meaning that people are going to be using these areas more intensely. A variety of different types of people from all walks of life will be using these areas. The areas themselves get more pressure on them because there's fewer green spaces and more people using them. It's not a better or worse, but we spent years fighting because for a long time, almost all the open space funding in New Jersey went to suburban and rural areas. We understood buying up large swaths when you can, but what happened was the argument was being made by a lot, oh, well, it's too expensive. Why would you spend $1 million to buy 3 acres in Jersey City when you could buy 5,000 acres down in Burlington County? And my response would always be I love the Pinelands, I love the Highlands, but I don't want to play this numbers game, because what I would never say to you, which I believe to be the equivalent if you're down in, say, the Pinelands, is, well, why should we spend millions of dollars where only hundreds of people use it, where in Jersey City, thousands and thousands? It's not an either or. You need to balance it out.
I think one of the things I've learned and has become more clear to me over the last couple of years is how disenfranchised communities have become, especially in urban waterfront areas, because the way things have been going, the way that industry is sort of given, sort of a blank check of what they want to do with their property and their waterfront, people maybe don't feel like they're being heard or being respected or being valued. And so when you talk about environmental justice and where that coincides with what we do and what I do, is trying to reclaim the communities and the waterways for the people who live near them.
My name is Kim Gaddy. I'm the Environmental Justice Organizer for Clean Water Action, and I am the coordinator of the South Ward Environmental Alliance. That is my local environmental justice organization in the South Ward of the city of Newark. And we are a partner with Newark DIG and New York, New Jersey Baykeeper. Environmental justice calls for the fair treatment of all people, regardless of our race, our income, our financial status, or where we live. We want to make sure that we have meaningful participation in the outcome and the vision of our communities. We don't want individuals speaking for us. We want to have a seat at the table. We want to participate in those decisions, because at the end of the day, this is our community. And so Newark DIG and the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper has been very instrumental in assisting us with making sure we had the right kind of projects in our community. We was able to outreach with the residents to hear what they wanted, because as I mentioned before, it's really important to make sure the residents buy into the solutions. So therefore they feel that they will now have a participatory role in the vision and the future.
My name is Nicole Miller. I am principal of M&M Consulting, and co-chair of Newark DIG, doing infrastructure green. Newark DIG is an organization, it's a coalition actually that was formed in 2013 of different stakeholder groups, organizations, and community representatives that are focused on stormwater related issues. Stormwater actually plays a big role in the city, in the sewer system and how our city operates, the functionality of the city, and the health of the residents as well. And so Newark DIG was formed really to engage and educate residents about the realities of their stormwater system, but then also to help merge those interactive elements that help make a healthy system run. And so that's working with the city, the county, and the state, working with the residents and the business community. One of the hallmarks actually of Newark DIG is that we are a local group who have either organizations that are longtime partners, Ironbound Community Corporation, La Casa de Don Pedro, the Unified Villsburg Services Organization. These are our partners, and they live here, they work here, they know the issues. They're also educated about the stormwater problems. It's not about pointing fingers. It's not about saying, oh, you're responsible for this. It's about what can we do together. And so that's really what the Newark DIG Coalition is about. So if we have a green infrastructure project, for example, taking a parking lot like the Cityplex 12 down on Bergen Street, if we can be able to, we've already talked with the owner, we've had some initial plans laid out. And so Greg, for example, has done a great job of helping us to secure funding. If we can take a portion of the low-lying areas of that parking lot, turn that into a rain garden, for example, then we're removing that amount of water from the sewer system, helping to remove the burden of that square footage.
You know, I fight for this city, you know, because I'm a fourth generation Norker, and I'm real proud that there is so much that we can really appreciate in this city. And we want to make sure when people come here that they just not pass through, but that this becomes a destination spot for them to hang out and appreciate our culture, the rich culture and history that we have in this city, the artists that are here, the environmental justice activists. You know, we have a long history of singers and artists, and we have New Jersey Pack, where a lot of activity is happening. We have new green businesses, incubators that have been coming into our community. We are a college town, so we have everything that we need. But now what we have to do is just make sure that we remove the pollution.
A living shoreline is any sort of a structure that is going to protect the coastline with some element of something natural and alive in it. The oyster program started back in 1999, so a few years before I first joined Baykeeper, with a simple question of, can they live in the harbor? You know, they were once here, everywhere, where we're looking at here. They would have covered the bottom all through New York Harbor, but they're functionally extinct now due to, you know, overharvesting, pollution, not having that hard material in the bay. It's pretty much just a mucky mess out there now. We don't have any shells or other calcium carbonate type structures where oysters can live on. So, you know, the populations, besides little pockets here and there, are pretty much gone. But was the harbor clean enough? Is it clean enough to even support them, was the first question under Andy Wilner and Ben Longstreth. And they did. They lived. They grew. All the critters in and around the oyster cages that they put out in New York were plentiful. So after that, we started an oyster gardening program with some sites in New York and then expanding into New Jersey. And then with that, we started a few oyster reefs in Keyport Harbor and the Navesink River. And the purpose of that was to involve the community, to bring those oysters that they were taking care of onto these restoration sites. So, you know, real sense of stewardship and community and the process from the beginning of growing those little oyster seeds all the way out to, you know, planting them on an actual project site. The reason that people really started looking at oysters, I'd say 20 years ago, and all the work groups and other organizations, we started really looking at the oyster restoration practices is because they are great water filters. I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but one adult oyster can filter 50 gallons of water. So you can imagine back in the day when the bottom was covered, you know, the water quality and clarity so that, you know, grasses could grow was so much stronger.
We're building a living shoreline to protect the shoreline from things like Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy was so bad because of the storm surge and because the shoreline's so overdeveloped. Our main goal is trying to figure out what the best practice is and the best way to set up our living shoreline so it does the best job it can do. So we collect all kinds of data. We collect data on the oysters, which involves going out there via scuba and like monitoring their growth. We're hoping to expand our project into more of the New Jersey waters and hopefully clean up the Raritan Bay a little bit.
Our coasts, especially here in these urban areas, are just all hardened. They found after Sandy, anywhere that had dunes or grasses fared a lot better. It creates like a speed bump. So the energy is coming. It's not going to stop it completely, but it will break up some of that energy, slow it down, and there'll be a lot less damage to the waterfront if you have these natural buffers there. These projects have to be happening. The focus is more on resiliency and habitat because that's what, after Sandy, that was the big switch, and I saw it, you know, I saw the devastation. Like, and here, this whole bay shore could use a living shoreline. All of the marsh is sort of getting eaten away and eroded away. I think every single one of us doing this work wants to have a sustainable population. It's really hard because there's just so few oysters in the system. And yeah, education and awareness is always key. It's always number one, you know. You get people interested and invested and to care, and they want to see these changes happen. You know, we're not out there playing on a boat. Most of my friends think that's what I do. But, you know, it's hot, we're sweating, we're lifting heavy things, but I would never trade it for anything. It's, you know, and you could see it on everybody on the team, you know, no matter if we've been working on it for 10 years, 25 years, or 2 years, seeing all of that, you know, putting this project in, seeing the life growing on it, it's amazing. It's absolutely the best job ever.
When you support Baykeeper, what you're doing is supporting an organization that stays true to its mission, fights hard, and fights persistently over many, many years. We don't follow the trends, we don't jump from one issue to another, although we're always glad to add new programs and projects that are needed.
My name is Kevin Moore, and I'm the, I believe, the newest member of the board of directors for the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper. And I come from a background, I have over 20 years of urban environmental advocacy, project development, and project management experience. So I met a young lady named Zoe Kelman, and Zoe told me that about this group, the Baykeeper. And I believe Zoe, I know Zoe said that she kind of got after, Greg initially, because she said something to him to the effect of like, how can you know about the environment, the urban environment, but you don't know what's going on at Week Wake Park? So Greg came right on out after Andy had came, and what I liked about him, because we had our own money, we had some technical capacity within the organization. They didn't come like everybody else with this coming to tell us what was going to happen, or I had a background. We had landscape architects. We had, this grassroots community group had actually procured a $3 million line item, and that's how. So we were very fortunate because we were kind of self-sustaining. And but one thing I liked about the Baykeeper, you know, they wanted to, you know, they wanted to see what we were trying to, they wanted to see what we were trying to do. And they didn't come in with anything other than like an honest curiosity. And once they found out what we wanted to do, which was consistent with their mission, because they'd been involved in urban areas, I'm sure, since before they'd met me, and looked at the importance of it, I really got I was very comfortable. At the Baykeeper, they just kept feeding me information. They just kept saying, look, there's something over here that you should know about, because the money, I don't know whether, I'm not going to say, no, you have to find the money. The money is not going to find you. So they were just very instrumental in helping us find different ways to resource our project. I think it's just part of the Baykeepers, part of their toolbox, that they do know they're ready to work in any environment. And I think more importantly, or as important as being a willingness to work in any environment, they want to work with everyone.
We're at Kearney Point, which is the peninsula between the Hackensack River and the Passaic River, between Newark and Jersey City. So it's really an incredibly central location in the New York, New Jersey Harbor Estuary. John and Wendy New had a vision for this property to make sure that it still had economic vitality and provided jobs, but to merge that with social justice issues. And they've opened their doors to nonprofits. We're thrilled. New York, New Jersey Baykeeper is going to be taking office space up at Kearney Point, which is a dream come true. We wanted to go north into the urban core, more into the urban core for a long time. Our office has always been down in Monmouth County, and that's where our boat program and our oyster program is active and anchored, and we need to be there. But we've always also wanted to be up right in the urban core by Newark, by Jersey City, in Kearney, and now we're able to do that, especially because it's a time where social justice and environmental activism in general are starting to come together. One of the other things that's really exciting is that the space that we're taking here is we'll have extra desks, we'll have extra laptops and computers, access to copies. So if any community groups, any students at New Jersey City University or anywhere around here, or residents who are interested in the environment or social justice, you'll have space. You can just let us know if you're working on a campaign and you need space for a couple of weeks, you need a desk, you need a computer, it'll be there for you for free. And we're trying to encourage other folks to get in here, because what Wendy and the team at Kearney Point have done is really made this a hub for social justice and environmentalism, and merging private enterprise, which is a lot of the folks in Building 78. That's what they are, is they're entrepreneurs who are rising up. Baykeeper has a long history with John and Wendy New, and John was tough as nails and heart of gold. Really smart businessman, but also really great human being. And together he and Wendy are just this dynamic couple. And Wendy's continued that vision.
Where we are today in Building 78. This is a redevelopment project of approximately 130 acres here in Kearney, New Jersey. This property has a very long and important history. Hugo New took over this site in the early 60s. We were the largest industrial recycler in the world. We had facilities on both the east and west coast. We were major exporters of steel scrap, and we also dismantled automobiles, buildings, bridges, etc., and ships. So that's what we did here. So we sort of went full circle. We built them here, and then Hugo New came in and we dismantled them here. When Sandy hit, even though the site was full, we were 4 feet underwater. It was the most traumatic thing that the site probably has ever seen. And it took us months and months to recover from that. So unfortunately, after Sandy, my husband passed away very suddenly. And I, not having any real estate experience, I had been in the recycling business and the environmental, working as an environmentalist and working with various nonprofits, the easiest thing to do at that point would have been to tear down all the buildings, these historical buildings, raise the site, which is what we've done on a third of the site already, get it out of harm's way, put up brand new warehouse distribution buildings, rent them out to Amazon's, Home Depot, et cetera, and call it a day. It didn't align with my mission, which was to create jobs and create some of that economic activity. So I wanted to think more in terms of how is it that we could take this site and really do something that is 21st century, that includes restoring the site that had been used over the past century for such heavy industrial purposes, and bring back the environment, remediate the soil, clean up the site, as well as implement practices here, both in terms of green infrastructure and even mechanical means to clean up the water on the site, and most importantly, get it out of harm's way. The majority of our tenants are small businesses, particularly women-owned and minority-owned businesses that we've tried to cater to. We have also Governor McGreevy's reentry program here on site. They're in one of our buildings, and we welcome them. Unlike most developers or landlords, having had a history myself in the criminal justice system, I worked in Trenton State Prison and Yardville for over 7 years as a social worker. I've been very involved with the criminal justice movement, and I have a good number of my people who are reentry folks, and are frankly the backbone of this company and probably the future of it. Through Andy, John and I became very active, and not only active, but it became part of our DNA in everything we did. And it opened up a whole new world to us. I want to get more engaged with not just the Baykeeper, but through their work, because they're so closely connected to the community and they're involved with other grassroots organizations, which is where I feel real change occurs. And their relationship with the groups is what I really admire, perhaps more than anything else, is that they're not an organization that needs to take credit for the work they do. They really are very generous in terms of bringing in other organizations that perhaps don't have quite the resources, but are working right on the ground and aligning themselves with them and helping them and supporting them. And that to me is very important, that you're really actively engaged in those communities, because those are the people that are most affected by all these issues that we've been talking about. And they're the ones that we should be listening to.
We're part of what's called the Waterkeeper Alliance. It started with the Hudson River Keeper, and now there's 350 keepers, 50 of them international. And the idea behind a keeper is that somebody speaks for a waterway and the natural communities as well as the human communities around that waterway.
Baykeeper is one of the very first waterkeeper organizations, starting back in 1989. And ever since, they've been out day after day fighting to protect their community's right to clean water. No part of our lives is unaffected by water. Waterkeeper Alliance is a global organization that unites more than 300 community-based clean water advocacy organizations and focus citizen action on issues that affect our waterways, from pollution to climate change. And New York, New Jersey Baykeeper identifies a problem, and they use citizen action, science, and the law to solve that problem.
They epitomize the idiom to speak softly and carry a big stick. So when they advocate for something, they don't need to have a press conference necessarily and send out hundreds of press releases. They will advocate for the local communities, for public access, for cleaning up the environment, for eliminating pollution. And when they tell you that, if you as a polluter don't follow the recommendations, they won't hesitate to sue you. So a long track record of being successful.
you.